Hey, good morning, everybody. Hi, Lou. How you doing?
Good. I get nervous because you never look like you're looking when
I
we
know
start
I'm always
the
just
show.
looking around, but
But you always hit the mark though. So
I'm always looking around.
yeah, before I opened it up, I'm looking at the camera shot and go, she's not even looking. Yeah.
Yep. And then I come on.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Well, hey, welcome to Makeup or Breakup. We're excited to see everybody a week before the new year and a few days after Christmas. Need I say more?
Yes. I'm happy to be past Christmas, but then you turn around and you're looking at New Year's. So
That's right. That's right. That's when they say the holiday season, they're not kidding.
and what's the single? What's the second worst singles holiday? Because Valentine's Day is the worst, right?
I think Valentine's Day, and I also think, yeah, pretty close second is New Year's Eve.
Yeah, New Year's has got to be the second worst singles holiday, doesn't it?
Right. Well, the worst part about the difference between the two holidays is Valentine's Day is like one person paying attention to you, buying you a gift, buying you flowers, taking you out to dinner for like a romantic dinner or cooking a romantic dinner at home, which I personally prefer, especially on Valentine's Day. They often jack up the prices and they have, one menu, which I think is stupid.
Yeah, they have a
But
special menu, which means it's 20% more than the normal menu.
it's more, and you're not going to get everything that you normally could choose from.
Right.
So, it's goofy.
Yep.
But you're right. The second worst, most dreaded holiday is New Year's Eve. And I don't blame people for that because the premise of New Year's Eve is celebration of life in general and getting excited about January 1st and also being out with other people.
Yep.
So if you're out with other people, that typically means some kind of a house party. Unless you live in New York City, you might go to Times Square, but it's typically house parties. And sometimes people go to restaurants, but even the restaurants and the bars, you're usually going with other people.
Right.
And you can almost skirt around Valentine's Day because everybody knows, unless you have a special someone, you're probably not going to be out at that expensive dinner, which is fine,
Yep.
But I think the pressure for New Year's Eve is be happy, celebrate, come out and party. And if you're single and maybe you're upset about the fact that you're single, maybe something happened, 2 or 3 days ago, right before Christmas, which is always my pet peeve when people break up with somebody like 2 days before Christmas. It's like, really? I mean, if you're trained in suicide prevention, you know that would be a really crappy thing to do to somebody.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, it would have to be something really extreme for having a reason to break up with someone right before Christmas. But
yeah, you got to manage your relationship a little better than that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, there's never a good time to break up with someone, but there's definitely some bad times to break up with someone.
Yeah.
I always find it fascinating that this does happen right before Thanksgiving, right before Christmas. And believe it or not, in my support group, I've had several people come in after I've already started my winter/spring class, which starts in January. And I'll get someone in there the week after Valentine's Day, always 1 or 2 people who were dumped or served divorce papers 2 days before Valentine's Day. Blows my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably were thinking about the breakup way before those 2 days before Valentine's Day.
Right.
And I just think it's incredibly insensitive and just mean-spirited,
Yep.
So this week is kind of one of those weird weeks where some people are working, a lot of people took it off. Everybody's kind of in flux during this week. And now it's leading up to when is New Year's? Is it
Thursday, I believe.
You know what? No, New Year's Eve is Friday.
Friday. Yeah. Okay.
So we're already in flux. We're not, we're kind of working, we're kind of not. There's people that have taken off for trips or whatever. And so we're sort of getting our sort of skirting around, sort of scooting around the week. And now we have to think about New Year's, but I don't really think there are that many parties, but I still hear of people having small gatherings.
Yeah.
I mean, have you heard of any for New Year's this year?
No, I'm sure there's some around.
Yeah. I haven't really heard of any like I normally would.
No, I sit down and
Mhm.
watch the Twilight Zone marathon, and I'm happy.
Yep. I
But
think
it's beyond
don't
the
they have the Three
relationship.
Stooges too? Isn't
Yeah,
that?
Three Stooges too, yeah, but I can't get anybody to watch the Three Stooges marathon, but I
Yeah, my husband
pop
likes that one.
pop in every once in a while. Beyond the obvious of New Year's, there's the kiss at midnight, and New Year's Eve is a reflective time, and that can be
Mhm.
tough if you're not in a relationship.
Right. It is really hard.
If you fall into the trap, there's New
Mm,
Year's Eve is any other night.
right.
You're changing the year, but that's just a number. You can be self-reflective if you want to, but it's not required.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because in my 20s, New Year's Eve was a big deal and Valentine's Day held some weight. But I never really liked the holidays. I always thought, "Mm, is this really like a necessary thing? Is
Yeah.
this kind of a Hallmark thing?" Like, you know,
Yep.
I just don't. And, in my 30s, I was definitely not so into those holidays. And, but the problem is, if you have that set of friends that wants to get together, you have that dilemma of going as a single person or not.
Yeah.
Um, I met with a bunch of the women from the support group that I just ended in early December. We continue to meet on Monday nights just for fellowship by Zoom, which is really kind of nice since people are all over.
Mhm.
With the Zoom support group, people can be everywhere, and they were all talking about their experience. One was Christmas Eve. She just couldn't get herself to go to a relative's house where two sets of families were, but they were intact, right? So it's a husband and wife and her nieces and nephews. Another husband and wife,
Right.
their nieces and nephews. Her parents, her elderly parents would be there. And normally she'd be going with her two young adult daughters, but they had decided to go to dad's on Christmas Eve, which was really for her benefit because they said, because then we can spend all day tomorrow with you
Yep.
and Christmas night, right?
Right.
And so she did get more time with her daughters the next day, but Christmas Eve, it kind of stung. It was the first Christmas Eve that she didn't have with her kids. And um, she said she got into the car and she just started crying because she was just feeling sad about all of it. Not like self pity, of course, but there's
Sure.
nothing wrong with this. I mean, people try to not cry. It's like the worst thing to do to yourself is to not cry,
Yeah.
right? Um, and she said she just couldn't stop crying. So she turned around and went home and had peanut butter and jelly on saltines and she watched a movie.
There you go.
But, you know, in some ways, I think she ended up giving herself permission because she knew in her heart that she wasn't going to be able to stop crying. And that's a hard thing to show up at Christmas Eve celebration with people if you're feeling like that, right?
Yeah, well, she was self-aware,
Yeah.
and fortunately, she gave herself permission to feel all these things and go through all these things because it's perfectly normal.
Right. Exactly. And then another woman was talking about how this was the first year that she didn't have her daughter, and her daughter was away all last week and came back, I think yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's a tradition where they would all go to the Midwest where her soon to be ex is. Actually, he's an ex, but they're in the 90-day Nisi period. So
Yeah.
technically they got divorced about a week and a half ago. Um, but for the sake of the daughter, kind of like what you talked about with your kids seeing their cousins on Christmas Day,
Right. Yeah.
she allowed him to go to take her daughter for the week and to go see the relatives out there. But honestly, the way it's set up with the divorce agreement is it's going to be every year.
Mm.
So it's kind of a tough thing because every year her daughter will be gone with the dad for an entire week and all through Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then they fly back like Christmas night or the next day.
Yeah, but what did she get on the other side of that?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one every year like that.
Mhm.
It's a great gift for the kids to allow them
Mhm.
to continue their relationship with their families and their cousins and things like that, and their traditions, and everyone
Mhm.
should be focused on making sure they have both families still available to them. But
Yeah.
every year for a week, you know, that's a long time, and that's a tough time to give up a week.
Right. Right. I mean, my feeling is, if most of the family is out there, then every other year you go out the week after Christmas with your daughter,
Yeah.
and they can postpone Christmas or have it, or only she opens up gifts, whatever. But um, my feeling is that's a little bit extreme.
Yeah, and this is the thing I think in divorce situations, and this is going to sound silly, and we didn't do it intentionally because these were just the type of people we are, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't because of the divorce, but it wasn't the celebrations weren't always focused on the traditional day. Like Christmas Day didn't have to be the only celebration. We didn't celebrate birthdays on the birthday so much. It's like if the birthday landed on a Tuesday, we'll have a party this weekend, that type of thing. It's
Right.
about the event. It's not necessarily about the date itself. And in a divorce situation, I think that's very valuable. So that's like Christmas Day. Everything doesn't have to happen on Christmas Day, right? If her daughter goes with him the week afterwards, that's fine too. Have your celebration then. It's not attached to the date. It's about the people and having the celebration. I think it's an important principle for kids instead of locking into that one day. Like a
Yeah.
birthday. It shouldn't matter which parent has them on the birthday. Have a party next weekend for them. Make it a
Right.
week-long celebration, a month-long celebration. It doesn't matter. It's about getting together.
Hmm. Right. Well, and I also think, you know, most likely, unless I'm not aware of the fact that people come from all over the U.S. I mean, so maybe like since you're doing that every other year on the year that like it's after Christmas, then maybe he goes, you know, to the place that has the most relatives, and then they do a day trip to like Ohio to the cousins that weren't there or something, you
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's not my divorce, but I didn't feel like it was.
Yeah, that's a big give. That feels like a big give.
I feel like
How
you
old is
know
the daughter?
the daughter's 12, so I mean it's not.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
in 2 or 3 years, she's going to be able to make her own decisions on that.
right.
You know, isn't that true that once
Mhm.
you get around 14 or
Yep.
15, the child has a lot more say in what the custody agreements are like?
Yeah, my guess is the dynamic though is kids feel guilty about saying no to stuff, and that's such a big trip and such a tradition that my guess is this guy's going to guilt her into never backing out of it.
Yeah, all kinds of wrong. Yeah,
Yep, exactly. But I think one of the main points is when we talked about holidays before, we talked about having a plan. And there's a pretty good chance that you already know because today's Tuesday, what's going on Friday night.
right.
Is there a friend that's having a dinner party? And are you really going to be the only single person, or will there be at least one other single person? Um, I do think it's important to value your own state of mind, right? So that woman who was started to just feel really just sad about the fact that this was her first Christmas without her husband and the kids
Right.
going to the relative's house on Christmas Eve. She valued herself enough to say, you know what? I'm not in a good place right now. It is what it is. I wasn't expecting to feel this sad right at the moment, but I am. And to give herself the permission to turn around and to call her siblings and say, I really wanted to get there. I really did, but I just couldn't. And I feel like she really embraced the lessons that we've been talking about
Yeah.
with the holidays coming up, that you know she also felt that she could say that to her siblings, which I think was great,
Yep.
because a lot of people don't have that relationship and they'd be getting, are you kidding me, cut it out,
Right.
you're already in the car, you should still come, blah blah blah, right?
Yep.
So you know I'll probably send her a text message now that I think about it, because we just sort of listened and
Plus it's smart because um, people don't understand that the way through these types of things is through them, not around them. In other words, if
right.
she sucked it up and went to this party and suppressed all her grief about not having
Mhm.
a kids around that time, that just pushes everything down and it never gets processed. She went home, she felt sad. I'm willing to bet, I would be willing to bet that next year it's not going to be the same at all. Process those emotions, go through them, deal with them, feel the sadness. It's okay. First of all, it's okay. It's natural and it's normal. So go ahead and feel it and process it and deal with it, as opposed to, no, I'm just going to put on a pretty face and then just go sit at somebody else's dinner party and feel miserable.
Right. Well, and it's funny that you said that, because that's what one of the other women said was the thing that she was able to think about during her time. Another woman, during her downfall, her, not downfall, but her downtime, when she was kind of feeling lonely because her kids weren't around. She said the thing that I did think about, that I came up with, was, okay, so I just got divorced this fall and this is the finality of it, even though they hadn't really been together last year either, because they were separated for a couple of years.
Right.
But this was like the final thing, like the divorce happened. She's just getting over that and getting used to that, the legal aspect of it.
Sure.
But I thought it was great that she had kind of this epiphany that she shared with us, which was, you know what? For a year from now is going to be a whole year later. And I'm hopeful that it won't be as difficult or feel as painful. Right.
Right.
That she might still be sad during part of it, but it won't be as bad, maybe.
But what happens, and this is what you see people in between relationships as well, they catastrophize. Very nice. Is that a dog or a wolf? Or no, it's a
doggy.
It's a golden. Yeah.
Yep, a golden, and yep, not cute.
Very nice. As you know, people between relationship, what they do is they catastrophize everything, and they work on the process that I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, and they deal with it on that level. And of course, we know that's not true.
Right.
What's going to happen here is people are going to have this feeling about what it's going to be like alone after the divorce without their children for a holiday, and they're going to catastrophize it. It's going to be awful. I'm going to die. And they're going to get through it. And then the kids are going to come back and everything's going to be okay and normal, and you're going to love each other and have a great year. And when you get back next time, you realize it's not the end of the world. It's just a night,
Yeah.
It's just a night. It's not ideal, but we'll be fine. My kids are still going to love me. I'm still going to love them. We're going to have a great time for the other 364 days of the year. You realize that it's not a catastrophe, that nobody's going to quote unquote die. But that first year you have to experience it and go through it to find that out.
Right. And then, another woman was talking about how there was a special service, I think, on Christmas Day, which is kind of interesting because you would think, who's going to go on Christmas Day? But it was a special service, and apparently not many people went except the people that were running it. And she's a musician, so she was part of it. But she was thinking to herself, it was kind of optional. And she was thinking to herself, I don't know if I want to go or not. Yeah. But again, she felt like she would force herself to try to go and sit through it. And, it was, I just was really proud of these women because, I've known them since, some for a couple of years and some just since the summer, and some of them just came to the group that was in the fall. And they really listened to a lot of the things that we talked about in the Surviving the Holidays program that I was promoting here. And, so she was saying, she kept saying to herself, do I want to go? Do I not want to go? Do I want to go? Do I not want to go? Because Christmas Day morning, she decided to get up and go to a restaurant, a fast food kind of place, just to get something to eat and not have to cook and stuff.
Yep.
And she said she was glad that she went because she wanted to feel comfortable with going out by herself. But, she said, I was crying a little bit while I was there. I just couldn't see it as much because the mask was on, except for when you eat. But
sure.
She said, the place was filled with all single people.
But she survived, right?
Yep. She survived it. And she's like, and I ate. So, a lot of times when we're stressed out, we don't eat, which is like the beginning of like getting sick. You have to keep up with your health.
But that's the holiday version of going to dinner by yourself. Right. Which is a big turning point in being single, where you just catastrophize it. You think it's awful. Everyone's going to be looking at me, pointing at me, laughing at me because I'm sitting in the restaurant by myself. And then you go and do it and you say, well, no. First of all, nobody cared. Secondly, you may have got a conversation from the waitress. You may have got a conversation, I always say sit at the bar. It's always a great place. You meet people, have a
Right.
conversation, and you get through it and you realize, hey, that wasn't so bad. In fact, I can do that. That was fine.
Yep, exactly. I love to sit at the bar because then, I think, the bartenders and the wait staff just understand. They just know this is a social thing.
Yep.
Someone's alone at a bar. You're going to talk to them,
Yeah, you have a pre set up conversation. They will talk to you a little bit to the extent you need. You don't need a lot of conversation. You don't want to tell your life story. You don't want to hear theirs. You just want to have someone who's there, and every once in a while they're going to check in and say, "You need anything?" And it's just
Right.
it's not companionship, but it's something close. At least you have some connection with somebody. And listen, it's New England. If you're watching in New England, you sit in a bar in New England, you're going to get a conversation. That's just the way it is.
Right.
With the people next to you or somewhere down the bar. And it can be as simple as, geez, I'm thinking of the chicken. Have you had the chicken here before? That type of thing.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's nice about sitting at the bar is it's natural to watch the bartender walking back and forth.
Yep.
Or it's just different than sitting at a table because, then you're kind of looking around. You have to crank your neck to see what other people are doing. But at the bar, you've got this own little like nucleus of a community.
Yep.
Like you said. And if somebody else is there by themselves, get used to asking a total stranger a question because, hey, eventually I'm going to be talking to you about my date coaching. Eventually you probably will be dating again.
Yep.
It's funny because a lot of people say, I'm never dating again. But the reality is, if you look at the statistics, because I like to do this, research shows that people will date again, Lou.
Yeah.
Maybe not today. In fact, probably today isn't a good idea, right? You just had a breakup a month ago. You shouldn't be dating.
Right.
But in the future, the likelihood is greater than not that you will date again. And so getting used to being somewhere, first of all, by yourself, getting to the point where you're okay being by yourself, alone versus lonely.
Yep.
And the reality is when you start to feel badly with some sadness or loneliness, I mean, Lou, that happens to everybody, even if we're in a relationship, for goodness sakes.
Right.
So we tend to isolate when we're single and we feel like, oh, here I am, just another loser single person. It's like, well, actually, your glass is half empty when you're looking at it that way.
Right.
There are tons of people out there that are singles and they're not losers. They're just single. It's like saying, red sweaters are better than green sweaters. It's like, you're not a loser because your sweater's red.
Right.
You wear red sweaters. Someone else wears green sweaters. This is like, people live in little houses. People live in big houses. Doesn't mean you're a loser because you live in a condo and you don't have a house. I mean, that's just like.
And no matter what your age is, the situation is, there are other singles out there, and they're out there all the time. And listen, my big thing is telling people to take small steps. It's like at the grocery store, have a half a conversation, just a line. And as soon as you do it a couple times, you realize that people aren't going to call the police. They're not going to look at you with disdain. They're not going to look down on you or call you names or anything. And you realize that there are a lot of people out there that are perfectly fine with that little exchange back and forth. And again, it's a little bit of a connection. You just feel more confident talking to people, which is why in the right situation, these New Year's Eve celebrations can be opportunity. They can be opportunity to go out. Listen, I don't know if I'd go if I were newly single. I don't know if I'd go with two other couples, just me and four other people, two couples. I don't know if that's the right situation, but a good party where there's going to be several single people, go have some conversations and have some fun. Well, why not?
Right. Well, the other thing too is we talked about this before the holidays. One of the ways to survive the holidays is have a plan. So the plan could be you're going to try to get through dinner. If you start to feel like you're going to cry or something, just go to the ladies' room, right?
Yep.
The other thing is tell your friends, hey, you know what? I really want to go to dinner with you guys. I'm just letting you know I'm still a little shaky. So, I'm going to try not to cry in front of you, but if I feel it coming on, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And if it starts to really get to me, I might leave.
Yeah.
So tell somebody beforehand. Chances are, if you say something like, I'm going to try to get through, but I can't guarantee it, they're going to understand. I mean, a nice friend would say, hey, you know what? We get it.
Yep.
If you just come for an hour, we get it. That's fine. I mean, that would be the nice thing to say to somebody.
Sure.
Right. And when you feel validated, when a friend says that, it makes you like just feel so cared for when you're brave enough to tell them that you're not sure if you can make it during the whole night. It would be pretty awful for someone not to turn around and say, don't worry about it,
Yeah.
because chances are, you could have like we've talked about this, you could have a bad moment at the grocery store just as well as at a party.
Oh, sure.
So think of it that way, that the odds of having a trigger or a sad moment are pretty much just as great at your friend's house where there's like 15 people walking around as it is in a grocery store and you're looking at the chicken and thinking about the chicken that you used to cook with your loved one, right?
Yeah.
So it really, you have to think of it as, it's not that it's a New Year's party, it's a gathering.
Yeah.
And you can decide not to go if you're having a really hard day. But I do encourage people to try, because even if you went for half an hour, you went hoping and thinking, you gave it the college try is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And if you isolate and stop going to things, you're going to be stuck. You won't be starting the healing process of trying things. It's kind of like, after an operation or whatever, people often have to go to PT.
Yep.
So they don't just heal in the bed. They have to get out of the bed and they have to walk a little bit, and then they have to get a ride or drive to physical therapy, right?
Listen, they replace a hip. What do? They have you walking that day.
Yeah, they're walking like within a day or two. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's like it's not, they're not coddling. It's not coddling, but they're not allowing you a long recovery time like they used to. It's like, no,
Right.
get up and start walking again. And physical therapy works that way. It works. It works hard and it works you early to keep going.
Mhm.
And emotionally, that's the thing. But you've been hitting it, which I think is the important part, is when people don't feel like they have control over the situation, it's easy to go off the rails. It's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to get into these feelings. But if you're in a situation where you have your own transportation, everyone knows you can leave at any point and they're not going to give you a hard time. And, it's just like everyone's sympathetic to what's going on. I think chances are you're emotionally going to be better just because you feel like you have control. If you feel like you have control, you're less likely to be overwhelmed.
Right. Well, that's the thing I forgot to mention. Drive yourself to the restaurant or the friend's house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because unless you're an Uber person, that's fine.
Sure, that's fine. But you don't want to feel guilty about making someone else take you home. You don't want to have the wrestling match with them about taking you home. You don't need to beg for being taken home. You've got your own transportation, or whether it be an Uber or something, then you just go.
Right. Right. And I think it's important to just tell somebody beforehand that you're not sure if you're going to make it through the whole thing.
And by the way, I don't know how you feel about this, but like I would make up something. It's like, I've got to leave at 8:00 because I've got another thing to go to. Then you can decide to stay if you want to, but you have an option to go. Right.
Right.
And you can see what your state of mind is. So there's no wrestling about it. There's no debating about it. It's like, no, because people understand you're probably doing multiple events.
Right. Well, and I always thought it was like so weird and awkward that everybody had to kiss at midnight.
Yeah. No. Yeah, but that's just the way it is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think the midnight dropping of the ball, if they have that on the TV, that could be awkward.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh,
unless you like scurry into the bathroom. That's always a good plan. Get to the bathroom before midnight.
Now you've got me started. Is there a worse night of television than New Year's Eve? I mean,
no,
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Just half the hosts are drunk. It's just horrible. All the entertainment is horrible. It's just like,
I know.
Yeah.
We were talking about that the other night. It's like, oh gosh, we have New Year's Eve, which is another night of bad TV. Because I mean, weekend TV is bad to begin with. Thank God for Netflix, right? Yeah. Because it's just like weekend, not that regular TV is great, but at least NCIS can be kind of entertaining. There's some good shows out there, but weekends are terrible anyway.
Yeah.
But you're right. The ding dongs that are that are hosting these things.
Oh, the network coverage is just, And my girlfriend and her daughter, they're into that kind of thing, so I've been forced into watching it recently. It's even worse than I imagined it was.
Oh no! So you're gonna have to watch like, oh, it's Christina Aguilera singing tonight, or whoever. Like,
Yeah.
oh, Justin Bieber's gonna come in, he's gonna perform. It's like, oh,
Oh
please.
yeah, and then like 3 or 4 people that nobody's ever heard of, let alone you've never heard of. Nobody's ever heard of them, and they're up performing. There's a big country bash though, but I got no shot of getting that on.
Oh, where's that on?
I think CBS has a big bunch of country superstars doing a New Year's Eve thing. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's more tolerable. I mean, I'll take that over some cuckoo rap thing any day.
yeah.
As people come out and you're like, what? It's like every time I see those kinds of performances, I'm like, yeah, that just felt like a whole lot of anger right there.
Yep.
I'd rather hear a sad song about like, somebody's breakup than, you know.
I'm just old at this point. I want to see an '80s act or something doing. That's what I want. I don't want to see the newest acts, but
Yeah, I know.
that's
I'd like
just
to see
me.
the Supremes back, or the Four
Well,
Tops or something.
I don't know how many of them is still alive, but yeah, okay.
Yep, exactly. Some of the older ones, but
But give yourself permission to feel these things. Give yourself outs. Give yourself control over the situation, and give yourself permission to feel these things, and give yourself permission to set up these safety nets for you, and give yourself permission to set up a way that you can do this and not only tolerate it, but maybe enjoy it a little bit as well.
yep. Well, when you were single, what would you do on New Year's? Would you just like hunker down and enjoy your night?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you
Yep.
weren't like stressed out about not going to a party or anything like that.
Not in the least. Not especially New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that's what I mean. New Year's Eve,
Yeah, no. I just perfectly happy staying home. There's no good happens. For me personally, it wasn't attractive to me at all. Any of these social situations or things like that. I just sit home.
hmm
New Year's Eve wasn't a night I needed to be out.
Yep. I know what you mean.
I
And
didn't
the
even
thing
feel
is,
the obligation to be there at midnight.
yeah, it's just, it's just, and technically, as you said earlier, it's just another night,
Yep.
and I think people put a little bit too much pressure on it.
But yeah, people look at it as a major event. First of all, turning the page of the year, of course, the whole resolutions premise is faulty. It's just like, I'm going to change my life starting tomorrow. Really? If it was that important, you should have done it a month ago. You should have done it when you first thought of it. It's not, your life doesn't change because it's January 1st or it's 2022 instead of 2021. We put too much importance on it. We overextend the importance of New Year's Eve. It becomes self-reflective. We're thinking of our lives. It's like, what have I done with my life? What am I going to do with this? I mean, it's another night.
Right.
Have dinner, watch the Three Stooges, and go to bed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing too. I've never been a big fan of setting goals this week right after Christmas for like my new year. It's like, no, I have goals in general. I don't have to come up with new goals. Like I think it's a lot of pressure on people.
Yeah. Again, if it were important when it first came to you, you should be doing it. You shouldn't be waiting for January 1st.
Right. Right. So I think people
And what happens, and you know how this works with the resolution premise is extremely faulty and self-destructive in a lot of different ways, because you set usually with New Year's resolutions, you set major goals and you set unattainable goals. When most of these things that you need to accomplish in baby steps and small increments. Set yourself attainable goals, get some wins. But this is something you should be doing on a daily basis, not just on January 1st.
Right. Well, and I know a lot of people like to have their New Year's resolution of, I'm going to lose 25 pounds.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of pressure, to be honest. I mean, I try to stay away from that. I'm always conscious of my weight. I'm always talking about trying to lose it, but I'm not going to say 25 pounds by February 1st or whatever. It's just like, that's crazy.
Here's a goal for you. Don't have that third sugar cookie, or, set small attainable goals. So not 25 pounds. I'm going to try to lose 5 pounds by the end of the month,
Right.
Get yourself a win, because those wins build momentum. You start stacking those wins, and weight loss and financial are two great areas to do this in, because once you learn the principles and once you start to gain momentum and get wins, it just starts to snowball and you get better and better at it. And you get, like, if your goal is, I don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck, and you want to put some money aside. As that money grows, you get more protective of it. You get more excited about it. You just do it more, but do it in small increments.
Right.
And
Well, I
same
remember you
weight
talked
loss.
about that. You decided, you know what? I've slowly gained weight and now I have to figure out how to lose it. But you didn't sit there and say, I'm going to work out 12 times a day and I'm
Right.
going to try to lose this weight by, like in, 6 weeks. Didn't you just say, I'm going to eat less?
Well, it was funny. I did
Isn't that what you did? I thought you did something like that.
Well, it started totally arbitrary. In other words, at the time I was sitting there and I'm going, and it was December. So it wasn't a New Year's resolution. It just happened to time up that way. But I
Okay.
just said to myself, I've got to get to 200 pounds by opening day. That was my thing. I'm going to get to 200 pounds by Red Sox opening day. And in my mind, I thought that was 15 pounds. But it turns out it was 35 pounds. I wasn't keeping track of my weight. So I didn't know how much I weighed. I just knew I had to lose some weight. And I'm going, well, okay. And so I just started to try to do the simplest things and the smallest things. People go on diets, and I realized that depriving yourself isn't going to work. And so basically my principle was a 500 calorie deficit a day. That was my goal. Just, it doesn't matter what I eat, as long as at the end of the day, I burned 500 more calories than I ate. If I didn't burn enough calories, eat less, I could eat a little more, but go and work a little bit more and burn some more calories. And so that was my start. And then I got really good at that. And it became, again, you start building a momentum and go, well, I can do 1,000 calories a day. And the reason I pick 500 calories a day, because a pound is 3,500 calories. So a pound a week. If you do 500 calories a day, it's a pound a week. Of course, when you're first starting, you lose it quicker than that pound a week. You drop off the excess weight pretty quickly. So you start to get momentum. It's like, wow, okay. Drop 2 or 3 pounds. I'm going to keep going, keep doing this. I can do 1,000 calories a day, 1,000 calorie deficit. I can do that. I just got to stay on the treadmill a little bit longer. That's all. And of course, you start feeling, with that and weight loss and exercise, you start to feel better as you do more of it. So it just builds momentum and you go. It's not like,
But were you keeping track of the calories, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Were you like, okay, so if today I'm going to have these 3 meals, then I'm going to cut out the bread at dinner. I'm just making that up,
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. And I think this is an important principle, and it works. This is why I think weight loss and financial work so well together, because there are a lot of the same principles and skills. If you have one, you can do it with the other. And the first thing about it for weight loss for me was accountability. So yes. So I logged my calories, right?
Wow. Really?
If you've got to do a 500 calorie deficit, you have to know how many calories you're taking in, right? And so there are plenty of apps, there are plenty of free apps. And it was just like, and what happened was, as I describe it to everybody, and I eventually lost, I put 15 or 20 of it back on, but I eventually lost 50.
Wow. 50, but you didn't starve yourself and you didn't go run a marathon.
Now I went from 230 to, at one point I was sub 180. At that point, I didn't like myself sub 180, by the way, but
yeah.
So I went back up a little bit, but and I'm up a little bit now, and I could go down a little bit. But as I describe it to people, I just didn't eat stupid 100% of the time. It wasn't. I never felt like I was denying myself. If I wanted a piece of pizza in the middle of the week, I had a piece of pizza. But I would also say, well, I'm going to have pizza today, so I'll lighten up on dinner, or I'll do something a little bit more conservative on dinner and try to gain those calories back. It was always, I don't care what I eat. I just got to burn 500 calories more than I take in. That's all.
So have you ever tried, they talk a lot about having your bigger meal at lunch and eating less at night, but I'm always afraid less at night, I'll probably be hungry by 8 p.m. Like, have you ever tried that, or did you not do that?
I didn't do that. I went with the grazing strategy. And in other words, I'm eating something like every couple of hours. And what it came down to for me, what was important for me was protein bars and having those in between meals, because once you start to do this, if you like,
I would get hungry if I, you know what I mean? I don't know. I get hungry a lot. I don't know what's wrong with me.
See, me too. Me too. So this is why the grazing technique was so important to me. And once you start that, once you get to the 500 calorie deficit stage, and once you start logging, how much you're burning and how much you're taking in, you start gaming the system, right? You start finding ways to eat more with less calories, right? And so you find the stuff that is less
Huh.
calories but satisfying. And what that comes down to is more protein. So, for
Oh,
example,
okay.
because the body burns sugars first, it burns carbs next, and then it burns protein the longest. So, if you eat 200 calories of protein, you're going to you're going to not be hungry longer than if you ate 200 calories of sugar or 200 calories of carbs.
So, like, what would be a good breakfast that would have protein so that you wouldn't be hungry for a few hours?
For me, I usually would make some oatmeal, and it would be oatmeal with oatmeal, and I'd put some nuts in there and things like that. And then, of course, a little protein powder. Actually, just mix it right into the oatmeal.
Protein powder in it. Okay, but so oatmeal has protein? I thought that was a carb.
Oatmeal has some proteins, but it's not bad. It's a good
Yep.
start. And, depending what you put in it, for example, I could put blueberries in it because blueberries are basically free. I mean,
Those are healthy.
they're healthy and they're not a lot of calories. So you can
Right.
you can go with a couple handfuls of blueberries if you want, and just add it to the oatmeal and mix it up. And sometimes I put a little honey in and things like that. Honey is very healthy, and you don't go overboard. But you know,
Mhm.
so it's just a matter of, for me, eating, and that's why the protein bars in the middle were so important to me, so that I wasn't, my struggle for me right now is after dinner because I don't go to bed early. So if I'm
Me
eating dinner
too.
at 6 or 7 and going to bed at midnight or 1,
Me too.
that's a long time to go without eating, you know.
Right.
So you find ways, you find some snacks that hopefully can get you through without, blowing your calorie count up too much.
Right. Well, it's funny because they always talk about nuts. And um, to be honest, growing up, I never ate almonds or anything like that, for God's sakes. I don't even think it was around, right? Um, areas where they're grown, like they probably ate them forever, but like it just wasn't a thing growing up. A snack was a ding dong, it's like,
Yeah,
or an
exactly.
apple. Of course, we had apples because in New England, we have a lot of apples and stuff. But, um, you
Oh,
know,
that's a
I
great point.
love, like, don't you love almonds? I love almonds. Oh my God.
That's a great point, by the way. And one of the other things that you have to be aware of is you can sit there and you can go get a little bit of trail mix with some nuts, which have some good protein. You take in a little bit of fat, but it's good fat and better fat than normal, than a ring ding, for example. But
Right?
what happens is you take that handful of nuts and you eat them and they're gone. They're gone in like seconds, right?
Right. That's the problem where I go, geez, that was like a small snack.
Right. Exactly. It wasn't, but because you just blew through it, you didn't feel that much satisfaction. You go get yourself an apple and you cut it up and you put hummus on it, or you put, almond butter, or there are some peanut butter powders that you can make up a little peanut butter that's really low calorie and put it on there. That's going to take you 20 minutes, 25 minutes. They talk about mindful eating. So you're taking a
Yeah.
longer time eating that. So you feel a lot more full, and it usually takes longer. The brain doesn't register you full for 20 minutes. So if you eat your handful of nuts in 2 minutes, there are going to be 18 minutes where you're still hungry because the brain hasn't said, because it just hasn't registered with the brain that you've eaten enough. But you eat an apple, it's 20 minutes, you eat it, you're done, and brain's caught up to the fact that you've had a meal and everything's okay. And
Mhm.
it just slows down your appetite a little bit better. There's where
Yeah.
these are one of the games that you start when you get into this. And um, another one of the game, another one of the games is just again, is metabolism. That's where you get at a certain point because you lose weight and then you get to a plateau and then you have to up your
Mhm.
metabolism a little bit. And that's where a little bit of weight training comes in if you do that. But, once you understand, you start with for me, start with the 500 calorie deficit a day and then start working from there. Do what you can. And if you do it in small increments, you get momentum because you start to feel it. And by the way,
Mhm.
don't obsess on the scale so much. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it's going to be okay, and you'll see the results. You don't have to worry about the scale.
Right. Well, the other thing too is, so this, I splurged on this. This is, they call it a sale mix, and it's
Mhm.
from my favorite chocolatier out of Salem, Mass, which is
Harbor
called
Sweets, yep.
Harbor Sweets.
Mhm.
um, so, but they put the chocolate things on the top, so now they're all gone. But they were like these squares. I don't even know what was inside of them, but it was like chocolate covered. I don't think it was marshmallow, but it was something really good, which is not healthy. But a lot of this in here is because they've got they have almonds, they have almonds, pecans,
Yep.
well, pecans,
Yes.
cranberries, and a hint of sea salt spray. So in case you want to have like some ocean spray in your food, a little salt. But even with the chocolate in here, the sugars are only 10 grams, and they say not to go over 8 grams.
Yep.
When you look on your labels, make sure that you're checking the sugars, because sometimes there's natural sugar, like from the cranberries,
Right.
and then there's added sugar, which is a no-no usually. But when
And
I
a new thing on top of that, there's sugars, there's added sugars, and then there's sugar alcohol, which is something you have to watch for at that point,
sugar
which is
alcohol,
sugar alcohol, which is basically sugar under another name, but they hide a lot of the sugar content under sugar alcohol. Yeah.
yeah. But the thing I liked about this is I forgot. I love dried cranberries. You just have to make sure that, I always buy the ocean spray ones.
Yeah, you got to make sure they're not sweetened.
Right, because for some dumb reason, they know people are addicted to sugar. Well, it's not a dumb reason, but for some dumb reason, we forget to look at labels, and we just assume that a bag of dried cranberries is a bag of dried cranberries.
You brought me to another valuable lesson I learned in the meantime as you learn to game this. First of all, have you ever heard the term shopping the outside of the store?
Yeah. Is it true though?
Yes, it's true.
No way.
Because on one end is produce, on the other end is usually, and the back is usually meats.
Yep.
It's basically whole foods. You should stay away from things in a box. You should stay away from things that you can microwave. If you've got a nutrition label on it, it's something you should be very careful about. If, for example, you go buy a chicken breast, great protein, not a lot of calories, will fill you up and will be a satisfying meal. You don't get an ingredients label on chicken breast, right?
Yep, because that's all it is.
Yeah. And there's no nutrition. There's no nutrition label on chicken breast because it's a whole food. That's what it is. You go up and pick up an apple, you pick up a pepper. There's no nutrition label on it because it's a whole food. And that's what you try to stay towards. Once you get into the middle of the store on the shelves with things that are in boxes that have nutrition labels, you're almost always in trouble. I was talking with my girlfriend about her mother who's retaining some water, and they're talking about her salt content. And it's like, that's what I told her last night. I goes, if you're picking up a box, it's going to be salty. They add salt to everything. So processed food always has salt in it. You got to be careful. So, go have a chicken breast and, go have a pepper, and, there are some things to watch out for there as well. But you shop the outside of the store and stay away from boxes and microwaves, and you're going to be a lot better off.
Well, it's funny that you said hummus, because every time I get hummus, I can't help myself. I just, I always just want to prove to myself that it's still a good thing. And so I always read the label, and I'm shocked. It's like 2 or 3 items.
Yeah.
I mean, hummus is so delicious. I will say though that they added sugar to the chocolate hummus, which I was disappointed in.
Yeah.
But my husband, I got him hooked on the chocolate hummus. And our theory is it's still healthier than like a chocolate brownie or a chocolate cookie.
Oh, sure, absolutely, yeah.
Right? But to make it taste chocolatey, they can't just put in cocoa. They have to put in, more than that. But I'm telling you, if you have not tried the chocolate hummus, oh my God, it's so good. It's really good. And that's good on an apple, believe it or not.
Yep.
But the thing that's cool about the hummus, Lou, is that chickpeas are just so super healthy, right?
Yep.
And by themselves, they're kind of a yawn. I'm like, chickpeas. I put those in a salad once. I'm like, God, that was disgusting. I'm like, bunch of chickpeas rolling around in my lettuce. But the hummus that's so great is a lot of it for us in Massachusetts. We have local hummus manufacturers, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome. They're local. So you're shopping local, but also what I think is so great, Lou, are the flavors. My God, there's so much more than just plain hummus.
Yep. I do the spinach and artichoke myself.
Yeah. Ooh, I haven't had that one. I always go for the red pepper one. Have you ever had that one?
I had the red pepper one, yeah.
All right. So is the spinach one
spinach and artichoke?
So the spinach and artichoke added to it.
Yep.
So is it? So you real almost don't even taste the actual hummus, probably, right? Because that's like,
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you know what you're tasting, you get it. But yeah, it's nicely flavored. That's a Joseph's. You talked about the two brands, is
yep,
Joseph's and Cedars. And by
yep,
the way, that brings us to bread a little bit, because Joseph's puts these flax breads out, and these uh, lavage breads and things like that.
yep,
Got to get away from white bread. If you want to lose weight, you got to get away from white bread. And by the way, that's a good first step. Just cut your white bread right out of there.
right. I
And
know bread is a treat. Like when you said if you're gonna have pizza, which is fine to do that every now and then, right?
yep,
I know when we were on a weight loss program several years ago, the doctor that ran it said, when I know I'm going to have pizza on a Friday night, I don't even say one piece. I'm like, if I want 2 or 3, I can, but I eat really lean the day before and the day of. So like that morning he had like 2 eggs,
yep,
and lunch he probably had like a salad, and the day before he ate
yep.
super lean, so that his body was like, all right, so the pizza isn't on top of a bunch of other heavy stuff that's not getting processed.
Yeah, and the other trick I learned, and that's a valid approach, I like it. The other trick that I learned is, if I'm going out to have pizza, for example, I will have a protein bar before I go, so that
So you don't eat as much pizza.
I'm eating the pizza as I'm eating the pizza as a treat and a taste. I'm not eating it because I'm hungry, because what that'll mean is the difference between having 1 piece and 3 pieces.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not limiting myself. I'm not trying to limit myself. It's just like, I do this when I go to Chinese restaurants, for example, because you can really screw yourself up in Chinese restaurants.
Oh my God, I love Chinese food.
I love it too.
I like Thai food even better, but
yeah, but instead of eating a pound of it, go in with a little bit on your stomach and eat, a quarter pound of it or a half pound of it. Have the taste, have the experience, but don't add the hunger on top of it. You know what I mean? So
well,
it's about managing your intake. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's probably sugar in the sauce, but one of my favorite things is the like ginger scallion green beans, which I know it's a side dish, but usually get a lot of them. And to me, like cooked green beans with ginger, oh my God. It's like, I always get mad when there's not much ginger. I'm like, hey, come on. That's like the whole thing. Like I love ginger. I love ginger. And you can get it even at Market Basket. You can get it crushed in a decent sized, like this big plastic bottle.
Yep.
And if I make a smoothie, I squeeze a bunch of that in. It's so good.
But it's a lot of this, and again, it works with financial, it works with calories, it works with weight loss. A lot of it is just awareness. For example, if you go, there's a company called Mint. It's a free company online, and I think Intuit does it now. It was its own company before, but Intuit bought it. Where you can hook up your bank accounts to it, and it keeps track of your transactions, and it will give you reports. You can call up reports on it. For example, what I spent this month, what I spent last year, and then within the month or within the period, whatever you asked for, how much did I spend on gas? How much did I spend on? And the big one for me initially was Dunkin' Donuts.
No way. Are you serious?
No, it's not so much big. It's just that you realize that, God, I spend $125 a month on Dunkin' Donuts, right?
Right.
And if you came up to me at any point in my day and said, do you want to buy this? It'll only cost you $125 a month. I can't spend $125 a month. So, but I found out I'm doing it at Dunkin' Donuts. That awareness just changes your behavior, because it's like, well, okay, maybe I cut that down in half, only go in the morning as opposed to going to the afternoon. Or what I did eventually was just started bringing my own tea. And cut that down considerably. It's the awareness. You don't understand. For example, people just went through Thanksgiving. They could have very possibly had a 2,000 calorie meal on Thanksgiving, but nobody's aware of it because you're not counting up the calories. If you were counting them up, if you were just aware of what you were taking in, you go 2,000 calories. I can't eat 2,000 calories in one sitting. It just change. Awareness changes your behavior. So being aware of what you're doing in terms of your diet, and I don't want to use the word diet, in terms of what you're taking in.
Yeah.
Being aware of what you're doing in terms of spending money, where does the money go? You'd be surprised how easy it is.
Mhm.
Like, for example, if I don't spend that $125, and I love Dunkin' Donuts, by the way, I don't want to hurt Dunkin' Donuts business.
Oh, I love Dunkin'
I
Donuts.
love Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
But for example, if you cut that down in half to $60 a month and put that $60 away, for example, all of a sudden you get a nice little thing going there. And then
Right.
you find 5 or 6 places where you can do that.
Mhm.
And God, if you go to Starbucks, you know, God knows
Well,
what you're spending at Starbucks.
and you'll have to remind me about this in a couple of days, but I'm thinking for the next few weeks, I should have some different nutrition coaches come on.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be really fun. We'll have them on toward the beginning of the show so people don't have to watch the whole thing, where they get to hear us talk about breaking up and all that kind of fun stuff. But I think I'm going to shoot to have some, I know several who I can actually invite to be on. We've had them on in the past.
Yep.
We've had people on in the past. And so I think I'm going to invite a few on. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that.
I think it's a great idea because, again, when you start out, you get the 500 calorie deficit. I think is a great start for everybody. But once you get going on that, soon you want a little bit more. So you start gaming the system and you start trying to figure out ways you can eat well but still save calories, or way you can burn a few more calories to eat a little better, things like that. You can't get into a denial situation. You can't diet. You can't restrict yourself because you can't sustain that.
Right.
You know, weight loss is not a willpower situation. It's not a denying yourself situation. You can't sustain it. You won't. You'll fall off it. It's just the way it is. You have to, they say it's a lifestyle and that makes it overwhelming to people, but it's about changing up the way you do things. And it's like I said, and this is important, just don't eat stupid 100% of the time.
Right.
Don't have
Right.
12 cookies.
Right.
Don't have a dozen Oreos. By the way, one of the ways of gaming the system, don't keep Oreos in the house.
Right. Just have one when you're out. Like if you're at somebody's house and they have cookies, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Or buy a box, take 2 out, and give the rest to your mom, like I do. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to take 2, but I'm giving her the rest because it doesn't matter if she eats a cookie a day.
Yeah, or I'll buy a sleeve and I'll have a cookie, and then my girlfriend's daughter will eat the rest of them, so I don't have to worry about it from there.
Right.
But
right.
there's not a bag of them in there, because if there's a bag of them in there, I'm going to have 3 tonight. I might have 2 tomorrow night. It's all about management and awareness. That's all.
Yep. 100%.
Yep.
Well, we're going to have to go because I have to be somewhere at 1:30.
Yes.
But this was a great show, and let's spread the word on this show. Let's everybody who's watching this, please forward this out. If you know someone that needs help with their dating life because they think it sucks out there, which it does, I can help. Or if somebody's struggling in a relationship or a marriage, I can help. I turn, difficult marriages and relationships around every week. Or on the other end, if you know somebody that's about to have a breakup, or they're in the middle of a big breakup or divorce, that's a specialty of mine as well, especially with the divorces, because I am also a paralegal. So I help people with the legal forms, and I help explain things that their own attorneys aren't explaining. And I also help them find good attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we do here. That's what I am, Coach Judith. I'm a love coach. And we'll see you guys next week. So no pressure. Don't feel like you have to go out to a New Year's celebration for a long time. If you want to go out, try to get out there for just half an hour to an hour. See how it goes. Drive yourself and report in next week. We'll be asking people how they did with their New Year's.
All right. We'll see you next week. We'll see you next year, actually.
That's right. We'll see you next year. Be well, be healthy, and enjoy your Friday night no matter what you do, everybody.